Okay, let's get started. Thank you for waiting. Hello and welcome to today's webinar, an introduction to ArcGIS Pro, the new and improved ArcMap, making the switch from ArcMap to ArcGIS Pro. This is part one of a two-part webinar series on learning ArcGIS Pro. Here are your presenters. My name is Stephanie Boyum and I'm a GIS analyst for North Point Geographic Solutions out of Duluth, Minnesota. My colleague Sam Giebner, who is the second presenter for this webinar session, also works for North Point as a GIS web application developer. On behalf of Sam and myself, we would like to thank everyone for joining us today, and we hope that you will walk away with more knowledge on ArcGIS Pro. Today's webinar agenda includes three main parts: information discussion with slides, a demo, and Q&A. In the first part, we will spend a brief amount of time going through the differences between ArcGIS Pro and ArcMap, along with covering the basic terminology that goes along with ArcGIS Pro. We will also be giving a demo that includes how to navigate through ArcGIS Pro and how to make a basic map, along with some tips and tricks to help you become familiar with this application. We will then wrap up the webinar with a Q&A session with your questions that were asked throughout the webinar. If time permits, we will also cover some commonly asked questions on ArcGIS Pro. You can ask questions by clicking on the chat button at the top of your browser window within this webinar session. The chat button is a green icon that looks similar to a message bubble. Once you click on this icon, a chat window will open, and in that chat window, simply just type your question in the chat box at the bottom and press enter. We will receive these questions on our end and will answer them after the demo portion of our webinar. We will try our best to answer everyone's questions in the time we have, but if your question is not answered during the time of the webinar, please feel free to reach out to us. Our contact information will be provided at the end. Okay, let's begin. We will start by asking the simple question, what is ArcGIS Pro? ArcGIS Pro is a premier professional desktop GIS application that was developed by Esri to help improve the GIS experience. It's a 64-bit multi-threaded application that allows to load more data into memory. The 64-bit geoprocessing is more robust and allows for the results to be more accurate, and processes that used to hang or run out of memory in ArcMap may be able to complete successfully. It also does not block out the application while the tool is running, so you are able to do more things at once. The 64-bit also allows you to utilize multiple cores of your processor, giving you more computing power. ArcPro is also integrated with ArcGIS Online, allowing you to create data sets in ArcGIS Pro to use in ArcGIS Online, as well as bringing data sets and services from ArcGIS Online into ArcGIS Pro. You can also visualize, edit, and analyze geographic data not only in 2D, but in 3D as well. ArcGIS Pro also has a simple search and query, meaning that several different components have a built-in search bar to help you find what you're looking for. An example would be in the table of contents. If you have several layers in your table of contents and you are searching for a specific layer but can't find it, there is now an embedded search bar in your table of contents where you can search for that layer rather than having to manually look for it yourself. ArcGIS Pro is very similar to ArcMap, but it's much more simplified and easier to use. The goal of this application was to combine three different applications that Esri created in the past. They wanted to fuse the following applications into one to create a much more powerful and user-friendly application. They first took ArcMap and with ArcCatalog for its mapping and organization abilities, combined it with ArcGlobe and ArcScene for mapping geographic data in 3D, and City Engine for the creation of 3D cities and buildings. The combination of these three applications into one created ArcPro, an application where you can utilize all three on one screen. This, along with the user-friendly interface, creates a better experience for the GIS user and allows more opportunities for working with 2D and 3D data. Now, we'll take a closer look at some of the differences between ArcGIS Pro and ArcMap. For the primary working environment, ArcMap uses map documents, or .mxds, and in ArcGIS Pro, we now have files called projects, or a .aprx file. I will go into detail in a few minutes on what exactly these project files contain. As far as organization goes, ArcMap utilizes ArcCatalog and our local machine to organize the datasets, MXD files, locators, and more. Now, in ArcGIS Pro, you have one .aprx file to organize everything instead of having multiple folders and/or multiple geodatabases for your data. For layouts, ArcMap was utilizing multiple data frames, but only had one layout. And now in ArcGIS Pro, you can have multiple maps, layouts, tables, tasks, and more in one single project file. For the user interface, ArcMap used toolbars and menus that you had to navigate through. But now in ArcGIS Pro, you have one single contextual ribbon that allows you to view tools in one location without having to open several windows at a time. There are obviously other differences between these two applications, but the ones we just covered are some of the biggest you will encounter when transitioning from ArcMap to ArcGIS Pro. Some of these differences, along with others, will be covered later on in the demo portion of the webinar. Now, let's take a look at some new concepts to understand in ArcGIS Pro, starting with the basics. As I mentioned before, ArcGIS Pro now has a single project.aprx file. A project file is essentially a collection of related geographic datasets, maps, layouts, tools, settings, and resources for you to use to create your maps. Projects can reference and include items from your organization's portal or your saved network files. This includes services from ArcGIS Online or Portal for ArcGIS. Projects can also include multiple maps and layouts rather than before an ArcMap having your data frames embedded in your table of contents with only one layout. You can now have multiple maps and layouts to be able to share and print. Projects can be very beneficial in that a team leader can create the project, share the project, and update the project as needed, and the team members can simply download the latest project package so they are always working with the most current project contents. This way, team members don't have to know how and where to access datasets or author maps. They can focus on accomplishing their specific tasks. When creating a new project, you'll simply choose a name for the project, specify a location, and create a new project using a project template, which could be either a global scene, a local scene, or simply just choosing from a blank template. Now, we'll take a look more at these portals that I keep talking about. With ArcGIS Pro, you now have access to portals where you can retrieve your data sets to use in your project. When you're connecting to a portal, you're simply connecting to ArcGIS Online or Portal for ArcGIS. The following collections of content are accessible via these portal connections: My Content, Groups, All Portal, or the Living Atlas layers that Esri provides for you to use. This gives you the freedom to bring in existing data that you already have published rather than having to recreate the entire data set in ArcGIS Pro. Sam will go through this part in the demo of how to sign in to your portal in ArcGIS Pro. Now, let's take a look at some of the structural components of ArcGIS Pro. The user interface is made up of three different things. You have your ribbon, your view, and your panes. These are the three main structural components that make up the layout of ArcGIS Pro. This next graphic that I'm going to show shows the main layout of ArcGIS Pro. You will see at the top here in this next graphic that I'm about to show that there is a contextual ribbon, which is very similar to other Microsoft products such as Microsoft Word, Microsoft PowerPoint, or Microsoft Excel. So if you're familiar with these products, then you will also be familiar with this contextual ribbon. What this contextual ribbon does is it allows you to tab through the different tools at the top so that they're easily accessible. And also, it will provide additional tools depending on what you're working on. You also notice on the left and right-hand sides of this layout that you now have what are called, panes. Some examples of panes include your table of contents that holds your layers, your project pane that holds your project folders, your geoprocessing tools, and also your editing properties for editing symbology or labels. You'll notice in the middle that we now have our view, which is where you will do your map work. You'll notice that the map is the center of attention and the panes are off to the side, making it a cleaner working space for your project. Now, let's take a closer look at these three different components. The ribbon is where you will find most of your tools, and it keeps the tabs and related tools together. Tools are then further divided into groups on each tab based on the related functionality. This ribbon is contextual, meaning if you click on something such as a feature layer in your table of contents, additional tools will become available in the ribbon for editing your feature layer, such as the appearance of the feature layer or the labeling for the feature layer. These core tabs in the ribbon include your project tab, your map tab, where you can explore and add data, your insert tab, where you can insert a new map, your analysis tab, where you can run your geoprocessing tools, your view tab, where you can change the view that you're looking at, your edit tab, where you can edit your data, and your share tab, where you can export your map to a PDF or share in ArcGIS Online. Next, we'll take a look at the View tab. The view is essentially the main working area of ArcGIS Pro. Multiple views can be open at the same time, but only one of them is active at any given time. You do have the ability to link multiple views, and views are dockable. So in this case, if you wanted to have a 2D view open and a 3D view open, you can have them open side by side, and you can also link them. So if you pan in one view, it will move to that location in the other view. Next, we'll take a look at the final component, the pane. A pane is a dockable window that contains commands and settings that are not available on the ribbon. These panes include your table of contents, where your layers will show, including your 2D layers, your 3D layers, and your base maps. Your project pane that holds your maps, toolboxes, data sets, layouts, styles, folders, and locators. Your portal pane, where you can bring in services from ArcGIS Online or Portal for GIS. Your notifications pane, where you will receive your notifications for your geoprocessing tools. You also have your toolboxes, where you can access your tools, and with an embedded search bar where you can search for tools as well. And also, this is where your advanced properties will show. So if you wanted to add additional properties to a symbology over the basic properties, they will open in these panes where you can do additional editing to the symbology, or another case would be labels.
Hey,
so
folks,
those are some of the...
Would you mind muting your microphones? Thank you.
Thank you, Sam. So these are just some of the basic terms and tools you will encounter with ArcGIS Pro when you make the transition. In this next section, Sam will walk through working with ArcGIS Pro and will go more in depth with these terms. With that said, I will turn it over to Sam for our demo portion of the webinar.
Awesome. Thank you, Steph. All right, let me go ahead here and switch presenter roles. All right. All right. So for today's demo, I'm going to go over creating a project, signing into Portal. I'm also going to explore the new user interface. We'll insert a map into the project. We'll add some data. We'll adjust the symbology. We'll also look at adding labels. And then from there, when we make maps, we generally need to include a layout. So we'll include a layout into our project, and then we'll add some map elements like legend and scale bar and north arrow. And then I'll cover how you'd share your map. So whether you're going to go ahead and just print it or share it as a web layer or export it as a PDF. All right. So let me go ahead and open Arc Pro for you all here. So today I'll be working in Arc Pro version 1.4. Takes a moment here to open up. I will mention it loads quite a bit faster than ArcMap, so that's pretty nice. So here we're kind of greeted with that initial opening window that Steph had talked about earlier. And so we have several options for templates we could pick from here. blank global scene, local scene, or map. And, kind of as the name suggests, if you open this up, it'll include a global scene in it. Or if you open map, it'll include a map in your view. I'm going to open a blank one here today, but also it's important to note that you can open a recent project as well, or browse for a different project that might be, on a shared drive or something like that. So I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to create a blank project. Let's call this something very clever, like new project. That's spell right. All right. And so I believe Stephanie also covered this, but by default, ArcPro will create a new project home folder for you. And it's generally, I'm pretty sure it's always located in Documents, ArcGIS, and then within this projects folder, and it'll create a subfolder for you for this specific project. And I'm gonna leave the create a new folder for this project by default checked. And let's go ahead and get started here. All right, there we are. So welcome to ArcPro for those of you who have never used ArcPro before. So what we're looking at here is here's a pane on the left side and a pane on the right side, just like Stephanie had mentioned earlier, and then we have our ribbon up top. One of the first things that opens by default, if you didn't choose to have a map open, is the project window. And this is where the project is gonna allow us to organize any and all things related to our project. I personally like to work in the project pane as opposed to the project view. So I'll go ahead and close this, and we'll discuss that a little bit later. But I guess the first thing I want to talk about is let's kind of explore the ribbon a little bit here. So the first tab we have all the way up to the top and left is the project tab. And this is where we're going to sign into portals, switch portals, and adjust other options associated with ArcPro and this project in particular. So I'm going to go ahead and so right now I'm signed into my Northpoint ArcGIS portal. So I'm going to actually sign into VisualND. And for those of you who aren't state of North Dakota employees or who don't use VisualND, VisualND is the state of North Dakota's flavor of ArcGIS Online. So I'm going to go ahead and add the portal. And now you'll notice I've added it, but I'm not signed into it. So I'll go ahead and right-click on it and click Sign In. I'm going to use my ArcGIS Online account. Remember my password. All right. Great. I've signed in, but you'll notice that it's not my active portal. So what that means is all the content I might want to pull in from like ArcGIS Online or a portal instance will be coming from my Northpoint portal. But instead, I would like to access content and resources from the VisualND portal. So again, I'll right-click on that portal, and I'll set it as my active portal. Great. All right, so now we can go back up top and jump back into our project here. And so, again, for those of you who have used, Microsoft Office products like Word and Excel, that layout looks very familiar. So, all right, well, let's work our way through the tabs as well. So now we were just in the project tab, so now looking at the map tab, we'll look at, obviously this is going to contain groups of related commands that are related to your map, right? So we have things like copy and paste, navigate, so you can zoom in, zoom out, toggle between previous and future extents. And then something else I'll demo a little bit later here is this new Explorer tool. Whereas before in ArcMap we had a pan tool, and we also had a zoom tool as well. This Explorer tool kind of takes the place of 3 different tools. So of course we can pan and zoom with it using, by grabbing and then zooming in and out with the wheel. And then additionally, you can identify with this tool as well. So whereas before you had to click on the identify tool and then click on the feature you're interested in, everything can be accomplished from this Explorer tool here as well, which I think is super handy. Bookmarks, I highly recommend using bookmarks things. We can add data, change our base map. We can interact with our data with selections and queries and look at attributes. We can do measure. We can use the locate tool, which is great. And then we can also pause and resume labeling. So, like I said before, all of your map-related commands are right here on this toolbar, which is nice because everything's in one spot and easy to grab. And then we'll look here at the insert toolbar. And so as the name implies, you're going to insert things here. So over here on the very far left side, you'll be using these tools quite often to insert things into your project. And so, things like adding maps, adding new layouts, adding data connections, adding folder connections, adding toolbox connections, that'll all be done here from the Insert tab. And then also, I believe Stephanie mentioned that the ribbon and the tabs on the ribbon are contextual. So right now you see some kind of layer template commands here, but let's say we wanted to, we had our layout open, our Insert tab would change a little bit. We would of course have our project commands, but we would also have some layout specific commands over here. So this is where we would access tools for adding things like our legend or north arrow and things of that nature. So we'll come back to that a little bit later. And then switching over to our analysis tab here, if this is a very handy tab as well. You can access things for geoprocessing. I personally use the Python window quite a bit, and it's really easy to access here. You can access your tools from this toolbar, and then you can access resources available through your portal, like maybe geoprocessing scripts that are shared, and geolocators. And then additionally, you have this what I believe is called a tools gallery, and this is fully customizable, and it's really nice because if you use a particular project for a repetitive workflow like parcel editing, things of that nature, you can customize this gallery to include only the tools that you'll use most frequently, and super easy to do. And so we'll get into that a little bit more later, and then some raster functions as well. And now we'll switch over to the View tab. And so this tab right here is, I would say, invaluable to new ArcGIS Pro users because what happens quite often is you accidentally delete a pane and you can't find it. So when you delete the table of contents pane, for instance, you'll go to the View tab and you'll click Contents, and you'll reopen the table of contents pane. Additionally, you can open the Python pane as well, which is completely redone. It's really nice because it has syntax highlighting now and colors. It's a whole different experience. So, oops, I spelled ArcGIS wrong. Kind of fun. Also, something to think about is the new Python window, and ArcGIS Pro in general uses Python 3. So previously, when we would do like a print statement this way in ArcMap, which used Python 2.7, we will get an error because we're using Python 3. So you'll have to do things like your print statement in parentheses. So not a bad transition, but something to be aware of. So I'll go ahead and close that. Yeah, moving on down the line here. The Edit tab, of course, contains our editing commands. The editing experience is much nicer in Arc Pro, and I believe we'll touch on this a bit in our second installment of the Introduction to ArcGIS Pro webinars. But all of those commands here are on the Edit tab. I would encourage all of you to explore that a little bit. And then the Imagery tab is a new thing for ArcGIS Pro, and Esri is really making a push to integrate your imagery analysis and expand upon raster functionality in Arc Pro here, and so a lot of those tools are available from the Imagery tab. And then the last one down here on the line is the Share tab, and of course this is where we can share our project as a package, or or a map package or things of that nature. And this share tab, again, is contextual. So as we add things to our project, we'll have more sharing options. And so once we've added a map and a layout here, we'll revisit this, and you'll see that we'll have quite a few more options. So, all right. Now let's go ahead and let's add some content here to our project. So I'm going to go to the Insert tab, and first thing we're going to do is we're going to add a map. So you can just go ahead and click the New Map button if you'd like. Otherwise, you can click the little drop-down menu there, and you could add a scene or you could add a new base map. So like I said before, I'm just going to add a map. All right. And then something kind of interesting to notice is that since we're signed into Visual ND, or the state of North Dakota's ArcGIS Online account, by default, it zoomed us right to North Dakota, which is kind of a neat setting that was enabled with Visual ND. And so let's say you were in a different organization that, let's say you worked for the city of Minot, you could have and you had an ArcGIS Online account, you could have it set to default to the city of Minot when you open a new map. So great, we've got a map. Something else to point out here, over here in the project pane, we can look at the maps that we have now, because previously this maps folder didn't have anything in it. So now we have a map added. And so if we were to add more maps, they would simply just get added to this list of maps right here. And one of the reasons I mentioned before that I like to use the project pane as opposed to the project view is that you get this nice folder tree style layout, which is very reminiscent of ArcGIS catalog, which a lot of us are comfortable with. So yeah, all right. So now that we've got a map, let's go ahead and add some data. So for today's demo, I'm gonna pretend as though let's say I'm a state of North Dakota emergency planner or emergency manager, and so I want to look at UFO sightings in relation to population density by county in the state. So in order to build our map, we got to start adding some data. And so if you'll notice here, if we click on databases, by default, our project has created a default geodatabase in the projects folder, and the default workspace for our project, oddly enough, is that geodatabase that we've created. But unfortunately, I don't have any data in that database. So what we need to do is we need to make a connection to a database where I do have some data. So if we go back up here to the Insert tab, we're going to add a new connection. And so I'll click Add a Database, and so now I'll just browse to that database, and we'll connect to it. So where are you? Desktop, Webinar Data, Geodatabase. All right, so now if you look over here on the project pane, we have a connection to another geodatabase. So let me open that up, and you can see we have our counties layer. I'll drag and drop that in. So it assigns a nice aqua default symbology for us. And then let's go ahead and add our UFO sightings. For the record, this is real UFO data that I pulled off the internet, so it's got to be real. Yeah. So let's go ahead and notice a few changes that have happened to our project here now that we've added data. So let's start by symbolizing our counties layer. And when I have that counties layer selected, you'll notice that we have a few new tabs that have appeared up on our ribbon, which is really nice because we have more options now. And similar to using Microsoft Word, like I mentioned before, let's say you had added a table to your Word document, you would have some table options and some contextual tabs that would appear up at the top. So let's begin here by adjusting the appearance of our counties layer here. And so this is one of my favorite parts of ArcGIS Pro, is that you can adjust most things in the symbology right up here from the ribbon that in ArcMap would require that you go within several, end up several windows deep to adjust the width of your outline or things of that nature. So let's go ahead and let's symbolize this using graduated colors. And so ArcPro is really nice in that if you're doing something that requires, more in-depth options, it'll go ahead and open a pane for you automatically. So I have my panes set to be docked over here on the far right side, which is nice because it's kind of out of the way, and it keeps my map in focus here. There we go. I got to make sure everybody's docked here. But again, the beauty of ArcGIS Pro is everything can be moved and docked wherever you want it. It's very similar to ArcMap. And then I like to keep my table of contents pane docked on the far left side so that it's always visible and available to me. Whereas your other panes will kind of appear and disappear as they're needed by themselves. So all right, so by default it's kind of picked a nice graduated color scheme for my counties layer, and right now it's symbolizing off the object ID. So let's instead go to the population density from the 2010 census. So that looks about right from my experience with North Dakota. And I'm going to go ahead and I'm gonna leave that color ramp the way it is, just because that's kind of supporting data to our story that we're trying to tell here. So now, great, we've styled our polygon layer. So now let's go ahead and let's style our UFO sightings. All right, so for our UFO sightings, I'm gonna go ahead and use proportional symbols actually. So again, if you missed that, I went up to the Appearance tab on the ribbon, and then I just clicked on the symbology dropdown and picked the symbology type that I wanted. Again, it's symbolized using object ID, so let's go ahead and switch this to a field called UFO sightings. So, kind of interesting. Actually, I want proportional symbols. I want graduated symbols, excuse me. We'll switch that to graduated symbols. So very quick, easy change. And I've got some kind of tan on tan going here, which I'm not particularly pleased with. So I'm going to, so if you notice here, you can click on the template, and that'll open up, I guess, the symbol gallery, which is familiar from ArcMap. But one thing I want to point out is, if you remember in ArcMap, if you were to open the symbol gallery or any sub-menu, it locks your map. Whereas you can go through all the sub-menus you want, and you still have interactions with your map and all your other toolbars and things of that nature, which is really nice, because we've all been there when you've clicked something too many times and ArcMap decides to crash. So yeah, that's a really nice feature of ArcPro. So all right, so I could go ahead and I could select from kind of one of these pre-canned symbols, but I'm happy with the size and the shape. I just want to adjust the color. So I'm switching over to the properties here, and I'm going to change it from this tan. Let's do green. That kind of says aliens to me. So let's click apply, and yeah, that pops out very nice. Not the best for our colorblind folks, the red and the green. So let's maybe do a bright blue or something. Let's see what that looks like. All right, that's kind of fun. All right, so now something else I want to point out. So you can adjust, very simple symbol settings or style settings right here, just using in the symbol menu. Also, you can add layers, like you were able to do in ArcMap, and then you can also add effects to your symbols, like shadows and halos and things like that. And it's really nice and easily accessible in ArcPro. So that's something I wanted to show you folks. All right, so great. We've added some content to our map. We've styled it a little bit, but for someone who's not as familiar with North Dakota, we should probably label our counties just to add some context here. So something else you'll discover about ArcPro is there's probably 3 ways to do most things. And some people find they're comfortable doing it one way versus another. So again, I've selected the North Dakota counties layer, and our contextual tabs have appeared for that layer. So now let's go ahead and let's add some labels here. So I'm going to switch to that labeling tab in the ribbon, and again, everything is right here on the ribbon as opposed to multiple submenus. So let's go ahead and let's symbolize our counties based off of the county name. And I'm just going to go ahead over here and label my features. And great, we have some labels. I'm not pleased with the font. I think today is kind of a Calibri day, so let's go up here to Calibri. C, it starts with a C. Calibri. Great, nice, kind of a fun font. Let's make our font a little bigger. Let's make it size 12. Where does that get us? And then let's make it bold as well. Great, I like that a lot. I'm noticing that Cass County in particular is a little bit dark on that dark background. So the other thing we can do is we can, of course, add halos and stuff. And those options will be made available to us in a subpane. And so one way you can, there's a couple ways you can access that. So let's say, for instance, you wanted to add an expression, or symbolized by an expression. You can click the expression button, and that'll open that labeling class pane. Otherwise, the other thing we can do, I'll close that pane just for an example here, is similar to ArcMap. If you right-click on the layer that you're interested in adjusting, you just you'll see a very familiar set of options here. So we have labeling turned on. I'll go ahead and go to my labeling properties, and then so right now we could create a label class if we wanted to, or multiple classes. One of the new things that Esri has rolled out recently is called ArcGIS, which is I would consider it kind of a combination of JavaScript and Python, and this is used throughout their platform, so ArcGIS Pro and ArcGIS Online. So it's worth looking into, but typically I would use Python. But anywho, let's switch on over to the symbol options here, and I'll just go to the halo. And so we need to specify a halo symbol. We'll say white, and then let's do a 2-point halo and just click apply. It's a little intense. Let's go to 1-point halo. Great, I'm happy with that. All right, now we've done a pretty good job of setting up our map. So now we need to add a layout. So I'm gonna go up here to the Insert tab, and I'm gonna select New Layout. So this is a really neat feature of Arc Pro, is you can select the size and orientation of your layout. So North Dakota fits a landscape layout pretty well. So I'll just go ahead and do it on 11 by 8.5. Now we've opened a new view in our project here, and that's for the layout view. And if we were to look at our project pane again here, I'll close that. But if we look in our layouts list, we'll see that we have this layout added. So we can also rename this layout to the UFOs, and that'll of course name our tab, and we can switch back and forth between our map and our layout. So something that you'll notice is we don't have anything in our layout. And so if you're thinking that we're going to need to go back up to our Insert tab to add our map, you're right. So let's go ahead and let's add what's called a map frame. In ArcMap, we work with data frames. In Arc Pro, we work with map frames. So there's a couple different options here. If you select the drop-down, you can select kind of a default extent. Also, you could select to insert a map frame that is zoomed to the extent of your map. Also, something to point out, Arc Pro allows you to have as many maps in a project as you want, or as many layouts in a project as you want. So let's say we had multiple maps to choose from. We could say in this window here, we would pick which map we wanted to create our map frame from. So let's go ahead and let's just create a map frame using the default extent. Let's see where that gets us. All right, so there we go. So we have our map frame, great, but not a particularly useful extent. So what we're going to need to do here is we're going to have to pan and zoom our map extent. So one thing that is very different from ArcMap that I think should be pointed out here is how you pan and zoom your map when you're in the layout view. So what you want to do is when you have your map frame selected, go up to Format. Go to the Layout tab, and you're going to do what's called Activate Your Map Frame. You can either do it from there, or you can right-click on the map frame and click Activate. So I'm going to do it that way. And now we essentially we are using the Explore tool, and we can go ahead and we can pan and zoom our map to where we want it. A little too close. Give our base map a second to catch up. Zoom out one layer. All right, we'll do, not perfect, but we'll leave it there for now. So now we've panned and zoomed our map, but we need to close the map activation. So the easiest way to do that is right up here, there's a little red X, and we'll just click close the map activation. So now we've got our map panned and zoomed to where we want it. So now let's go ahead and add a few map elements here quickly. So as I mentioned before, we'd revisit the Insert tab, and since we're looking at a layout view here, you'll notice that the Insert tab has a few different options on the ribbon. So again, of course, we have our project options or project commands. We now have a map frames group of commands. We also have some map surrounds commands and various other cartographic and layout commands. So first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to add a north arrow. So I just simply click the north arrow, and as you'll see, we have all the Esri arrows that you've come to know and love. I'm a big fan of, I like this one. It's kind of a interesting style here. So you can resize it, of course. It's really big. But if you notice, as we move the north arrow around the page, it'll automatically try to snap our object with either the page itself or elements on the page, which is, I think, pretty handy, especially once we add multiple map elements. And you know what? I decided I'm not happy with that north arrow. And you'll notice we have a couple more contextual tabs up top. And so because we have our north arrow selected, these tabs refer to the north arrow. So if we click Format, we can switch the style. Oops. If we click Format, we can switch the style of our north arrow. So I've just kind of switched to a more simplistic north arrow here. So I'll just place that there. And all right, let's add some more things. So let's add a scale bar. So again, if you just click the button, it'll just add one by default. Or if you click the drop down, you could pick the style you want. So I'll put that there, and I'll line it up with my north arrow. I'm not entirely pleased with by the fact that it's using kilometers. So again, leaving that selected, I'll go back up to the ribbon, to the Format tab, and I will change my units here. Actually, my units are on the Design tab, so you'll have to kind of explore with the different contextual tabs that open. And my units, I'm going to change to miles. All right, 120 miles. Kind of a weird breakdown. I'm going to shoot for 100 miles. And, oops, a little too little. All right, great. So now, again, looking at the options for this, you can adjust the subdivisions and things of that nature, but also you can very easily adjust the font, the size of the font, and the color of the font. So things to explore. So yeah, so the last thing I'm going to add here to our map is I'm going to add a legend. And so previously you would use the legend wizard in ArcMap to create your legends, but in Arc Pro you just click the new legend button, and you'll notice that nothing is added. So what you need to do is actually draw a container, I guess, for your legend. So I've selected legend, and it's going to automatically create my legend here. So if you'll notice, great, I have a legend, but I want to change some things about it. For instance, the items that are on my legend. So now, if you'll notice over here on our left side in the table of contents, all of those elements that we've been adding to our layout have appeared in the table of contents, as opposed to the layers that are that are in that map. So if you were to activate this map frame, you would see the layers themselves, and you could adjust that. But let's focus here on the layout. And so you can do things like turn the map frame on and off, turn the north arrow on and off, but also adjust the legend. So in here, you can, looking at the legend, you could take a particular layer out of a legend if you wanted to. Also, you can resize the legend to make it 1 or 2 columns. We'll leave it as, let's make it 2 columns. And then also up here on our contextual tab, you have other options for styling your legend. So let's adjust the legend background here. And I'd like to set the legend to be white background. So, and then of course you can adjust all sorts of other things like the font and the style and things of that nature. So I know we're going pretty quickly over this, but just wanted to kind of familiarize you with where things are. All right, great. So we've created a map, added a layout, added some features to our map. So let's go ahead here and let's go ahead and talk about sharing your map. So now we can go up here to our share tab, and I guess the 2 most commonly used commands in my book are, I guess you can print the layout, or you can share the layout in a variety of different formats. One thing to notice, the Adobe Illustrator format is no longer supported with Arc Pro, but if you're looking to use your map in like Adobe Illustrator or Photoshop, I would recommend using SVG or even PDF. So something to think about there. And then also very quickly, we can now that we have content in our project, we can share our project or save our project as a project template. We could create a layout file, so essentially a standalone layout that we can import into other projects. If we switch over here to the map view, you'll notice that the share tab has a couple more commands available to us. We can share the whole project as a project package, so it includes all of the maps, data, styles, toolboxes. So everything in your project just buttons up nicely. You can create a new map package that you can share. You can create a layer package, all sorts of options there. Additionally, you can, since we're signed into a portal, we could share this map as a web map in ArcGIS Pro or in Portal. Also, we could share a layer as a web layer, or we could overwrite an existing layer. And then yeah, so these other options here, things we covered. But yeah, I guess that's what I want to show you for the demo. And I think I'm going to switch back over to Steph in the time we have remaining for any questions that you folks have submitted.
Thank you, Sam. I just wanted to point out here that there are some additional resources for you, just such as some system requirements, what you need to install to be able to use ArcGIS Pro, also some download and install help, as well as licensing, some more information on getting started with ArcGIS Pro, and then also some ArcGIS Pro help for using some of those tools that Sam pointed out in the demo. We will also be covering some of the items in this help document in our second webinar as well. So feel free to join part 2 as that comes out as well. So let's just take the last few minutes we have here to answer some additional questions that you guys have. We had a lot of great questions coming in. Let's see here. Sam, I will have you take this one since you were doing such a great job with the demo part. What are some handy right-click features that will save time using the ribbon?
That's a good question. So like I mentioned before, a lot of, if you're comfortable with, using ArcMap, a lot of the options are still there that existed before. So like for instance, the select all, things like that, exporting features, exporting the table, and then also you can now have these options to save a layer file, share as a web layer, or even override a web layer, all from your right-click menu. And then a really easy way to get the the associated panes open with a piece of data is to just right-click and go Properties, and this is how you can access like the definition query and other options as well. So.
Great, thank you, Sam. We have another question coming in here. We have a question that is asking, can offline collector maps be created in Pro?
That is a great question. I believe so. Again, you could create the map in Arc Pro, and then you could share it with, or you could publish it as a web map to your ArcGIS Online, or you could take in an existing web map and configure it in Arc Pro. The one thing to consider, of course, when you're doing offline collector is making sure that it really depends on where the data source that your data is coming from. So it could either be hosted data in Arc Pro or data, I believe, on SDE as well. So yep, you can.
Great. All right, since you have Arc Pro open, I'll let you take this next one too. We have a question, is accessing the attribute table similar?
Yeah. So again, you can right-click on your layer and just click attribute table. And again, this shows up as a pane, or actually I think it's a view. So you can put it right up here with your, what do I do with that? There it is. Yeah. So very similar. Also, you could do it up here from the ribbon as well, but I typically do it from the right-click menu.
Great. All right, Sam, I can take these next couple ones. We had a question come in, will data-driven pages still be available? And yes, data-driven pages are available, but in ArcGIS Pro, they're now called map series. And it's no longer a geoprocessing tool, but it is a layout option now. So when you import an MXD with data-driven pages, all you need to do is go enable the map series, and it will keep your original settings from the MXD. So yes, data-driven pages are still available. They are just called map series now.
Right. Yeah, so it'd be, again, you would be in your layout and then click map series right here. And then you'd get the options that way. And it's really nice because you have a list over here in your table of contents. You'll get a list of all the different pages, and you can just select on them and view them very quickly. So I did see a question about does labeling have similar options as Maplex? Actually, by default, ArcGIS Pro uses the Maplex labeling engine. So yes, it does. And then also I'm seeing are shapefiles compatible with ArcGIS Pro or just geodatabases? Shapefiles are in fact compatible with ArcGIS Pro. Again, you just need to make a connection to where that's located. So typically, if you're trying to access shapefiles, you would add a new folder connection and then specify the folder. So let's do documents. I think in Scratch I have some. So I've created a new folder connection. And if I look over here in my project pane, in my Scratch folder, doesn't look like I have any shapefiles in there. But if I did have shapefiles in my Scratch folder, or whatever folder you connect to, they would appear there. So.
All right, looks like we had another question come in a little bit earlier. Can I use my licensed ArcGIS Desktop 10.5 extensions with ArcGIS Pro? Yes, since ArcGIS Pro is part of ArcGIS Desktop, you are licensed to use the same extensions for Pro as you are with ArcMap as they are available. And the extension licenses for Pro are managed using the same method you have chosen for your ArcGIS Pro license. So yes, your extensions will be available with ArcGIS Pro as well.
Mm-hmm. Do we have time for a couple more? I know we're scheduled to run until 11, it looks like, but we could certainly answer more if people are willing to stay on.
All right, looks like we just had one come in. Is the standard, basic, and advanced licensing in addition to Pro, or is it just Pro?
Standard, basic, and advanced licensing in addition to Pro. Actually, it's I guess that licensing scheme applies to Pro, if that makes sense. And I hope I am addressing your question properly here. So you can, certain tools and geoprocessing commands are are available at different licensing levels. But I believe that if you have an ArcGIS just an ArcGIS license in general, you have Pro.
Yes, and it's very similar to ArcDesktop, where you do have the standard, basic, and advanced. So and also just like the last question we addressed with the extensions, it'll be very similar. So if you have the advanced ArcGIS Desktop, you will have the advanced Pro, where you will have access to those different extensions.
Mm-hmm. Something else I should mention is some of these kind of additional links are rather long, and we'll include those in the video description once we post this.
Absolutely. It looks like we have just a couple minutes here. I just want to take these last couple minutes just to address some commonly asked questions that we get in here. One being, can I import an MXD into ArcGIS Pro? Yes, all the items in the document are imported if possible into your project, and if the import is successful, a map and layout will be added to your project, and this can also include your ArcGlobe projects and your ArcScene projects if you do have 3D data available. So you can bring an MXD into ArcGIS Pro, but you cannot bring a project APRX file into ArcMap.
Great. Well, it looks like we have another question submitted here. Attribute question: calculate geometry and copy and paste functions. How do we do those? So I would say very similar to ArcMap. You just again open your attribute table, and let's say we wanted to calculate a field here. You just right click on your field, similar to ArcMap, and what's going to happen now is it's going to open your geoprocessing pane. And so this is actually how you run all of your tools and geoprocessing events in ArcGIS Pro. And so in this case, we're using the calculate field. So this should all look very familiar. But additionally, if you click the back arrow, that'll allow you to search your tools. And so again, very similar to that search for tools that we did in ArcMap. And additionally, you can add favorite tools that'll appear right here. Also, your toolboxes will show up there, and any tools available through your portal will show up there. And additionally, you can. Additionally, tools that you use frequently will show up there on that geoprocessing pane as well. Oh, I just saw a question come in. Asking what is the timeline for ArcGIS Pro to completely replace ArcGIS Desktop. So the timeline looks like the last supported release of ArcMap will be 10.6. And is that this summer, Steph, do you know?
I believe so.
Yeah, and so after that, they will not be releasing any more ArcMaps. So great that you all decided to join us today to kind of get ahead of the curve. But yep, so 10.6 will be their last release of ArcMap. I see a question that is asking, how long will VB script be supported? That's a great question. I'm assuming for quite a while. There was talk of just including Python and ArcadeScript when Arc Pro came out, but of course they included it. But I guess we'll have to see. I think a lot of people are very invested in VB, and VB is great. So I would imagine for a while. All right, and also, can Arc Pro read mapped drives? Yes, it can. So if we went up here to, again, we would just make a connection to it. Let's make a connection to a database, and right here you can see some connected drives that I have on my machine. So I just connect to that. Well, I guess I'd have to find a geodatabase, but I could create a folder connection to a mapped drive as well. So, and if we look at our project pane, one second, I might have to refresh it. Oh, there it is. Yep, this folder here is mapped drive. So, all right.
Great. Well, those are some great questions that we got coming in. Looks like we're about time to wrap up here. So if you have any additional questions, please feel free to send them to us. Here is our contact information. And we also recorded this webinar, so we'll be sending out a link to North Dakota IDT to disperse out to those of you who have been watching in North Dakota. So I guess with that, on behalf of Sam and myself, we'd like to thank you for attending our webinar. We hope you feel more comfortable making the switch from ArcMap to ArcGIS Pro if you haven't done so already. And like I said, please feel free to contact us if you have any additional questions regarding ArcGIS Pro. So thank you.
Thanks.